Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I am Aneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. Pakistan has condemned spiteful statements from some spoilers in the Afghan government. National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf says those officials in Kabul are constantly attempting to harm bilateral ties. In a series of tweets, he said Pakistan will not let the spoilers affect Islamabad's support to Afghans for peace. Tajikistan has held its largest ever military drills involving the nation's entire army amid rising instability in neighboring Afghanistan. At the occasion, President Emomali Rahman said the country must be ready to protect hard-earned peace and stability. In New Delhi, hundreds of farmers have staged a sit-in near Parliament, renewing their call for the repeal of contentious farm laws. Farmer leaders say they will continue their protest to remind the government of their long-pending demands. Hundreds of farmers had died during the 7-month agitation against the 3 new agriculture laws they say threaten their livelihoods. Russia has rejected some aspects of a deal between the United States and Germany on the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Russia had never used energy as a tool of political pressure. Under the deal, the US and Germany agreed to impose sanctions on Russia if it uses project as a weapon against Europe. These were the top stories. News in detail after a short break. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. Start from Pakistan, which has condemned spiteful statements from some spoilers in the Afghan government. National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf says these officials in Kabul are constantly attempting to harm bilateral ties. In a series of tweets, he said such officials aim to deflect attention from their own failures. He said Pakistan will not let a handful of venomous minds affect Islamabad's support to Afghan peace. Yusuf reiterated that Pakistan remains committed to facilitating an inclusive political settlement in Afghanistan. Now, the US military says the Taliban have gained strategic momentum in Afghanistan as they now control half the countryside. US Top General Mark Milley says the group has captured 200 out of the 419 districts and encircled 17 provincial capitals. Talking to reporters, he said the fighting between Afghan forces and the Taliban is expected to escalate in the coming weeks. Milley said there is a possibility of a negotiated outcome as well as of Taliban takeover. The top US general said the situation is a test of the will of the Afghan leadership, the security forces and the people. He reiterated Washington's resolve to continue its support to the Afghan government and the security forces. Meanwhile, the Taliban claimed to have captured strategic Marja district in Helmand province. In a tweet, the spokesperson said the group also seized a large number of weapons and vehicles. Tajikistan has held its largest ever military drills involving the nation's entire army amid rising instability in neighboring Afghanistan. The country mobilized 130,000 men from its military reserve in addition to 100,000 active servicemen for the 3-hour exercise. At the occasion, President Emomali Rahman said Tajikistan must be ready to protect the hard-earned peace and stability. He said 20,000 men from the military reserve have been sent to reinforce Tajikistan's border with Afghanistan. Russia also plans to hold joint drills with Tajikistan and Uzbekistan next month. Now in India, New Delhi, where hundreds of farmers have staged a sit-in near Parliament renewing their call for the repeal of contentious farm laws. Farmer leaders say they will continue their protest to remind the government of their long-pending demands. They say the three agriculture laws introduced in September 2020 only favour big corporates and threatened their livelihoods. Tens of thousands have camped out on main highways leading to New Delhi for more than 7 months. Over 400 had reportedly died during the longest-running protests against Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Russia has rejected some statements in a deal between the United States and Germany on the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Russia had never used energy as a tool of political pressure. The 1,230-kilometre pipeline under the Baltic Sea will double Russian gas exports to Germany. Under the deal, the US and Germany agreed to imposing sanctions on Russia if it uses the project as a weapon against Europe. The pact will also make sure that Ukraine continues to receive transit fees once Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline becomes operational. The current transit deal between Russia and Ukraine ends in 2024. Iran has opened its first oil terminal in the Gulf of Oman to avoid using the Strait of Hormuz shipping route. In a televised speech, outgoing President Hassan Rouhani said the move is of strategic importance for Iran. Currently, Iran's main oil export terminal is located inside the Strait of Hormuz, which has been a focus of regional tensions for decades. Rouhani said Iran aims to export 1 million barrels per day of oil from the new facility. Now, Syria says its air defences have intercepted an Israeli attack on the Al-Qusayr area in the western Homs province. State media quoted the military as saying they shot down most of the missiles. It said the strikes caused no casualties but only material damage. The Israeli military said it had no comment on the incident. This comes days after Damascus's air defences intercepted a barrage of Israeli missiles over Al-Safira in southern Aleppo. Now, in Pakistan, the coronavirus has claimed 40 lives in the last 24 hours, while the death toll nears 23,000. The Health Ministry says more than 2,100 people tested positive overnight. It said the case load has crossed 998,000, of which nearly 923,000 have recovered. The ministry said there are more than 52,000 active cases and nearly 2,500 are critical. It said more than 24 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine have been administered so far, and over 6.8 million people have been fully vaccinated. Now, China says it is against politicizing the matter of COVID-19 origins and will not follow the World Health Organization's plan on the study. Meanwhile, Brazil has recorded over 1,400 daily deaths from the virus and more than 54,000 new cases. While globally, the coronavirus has claimed more than 4 million lives and infected over 191 million people. More details about the pandemic in this report.
The COVID-19 cases have nearly tripled in the U.S. over the last 2 weeks amid an onslaught of vaccine misinformation. U.S. President Joe Biden expressed pointed frustration over the slowing COVID-19 vaccination rate in the country. He pleaded that it is gigantically important for Americans to step up and get inoculated against the virus as it surges once again. Meanwhile, YouTube has removed videos from Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro's channel for spreading misinformation about the coronavirus. Over in Australia, daily cases have spiked again despite a weeks-long lockdown, while authorities warned that infections would rise more.
And we can't stress enough how contagious, it's cruel the way this virus is contagious. Any human contact means you can pick up the virus or give the virus. It is spreading like we've never seen before. And I especially want to thank our contact tracers, because if it was not for their efforts, the 124 case numbers today would literally have been in their thousands, and I don't say that lightly.
South Korea has also reported its highest ever daily increase in coronavirus cases. Meanwhile, Tokyo 2020 organizers say 2 more athletes residing in the Olympic Village tested positive for COVID-19. The situation in Europe is not so different as well. Government figures show the number of COVID-19 patients admitted to hospital in England has reached its highest level for nearly 5 months. While in Greece, protesters and police clashed outside Athens Parliament during a rally against vaccinations. In France, the public as well as the opposition continue to protest against the implementation of a health pass and compulsory vaccinations.
We need other things than a monarch who from his Elysee palace gives orders to his subjects, who in 10 minutes goes back on his promises of the previous day. Instead of targeting, you are showering people with vaccines, even the children, teenagers who have no interest in being vaccinated. Instead, you set up social constraints. Everyone tracks everyone, everywhere in restaurants, cafes, commercial centers, movie theaters, but you restrain freedoms.
Tunisia's Prime Minister Hichem Mechechi admitted that the government's response to the pandemic has been criminal. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has announced to ban all direct or indirect travel by citizens to Indonesia over concerns about the outbreak there.
Now, a new study has found that the actual number of COVID-19 deaths in India could be as much as 10 times the official count. Researchers from the US-based Center for Global Development estimate the number of deaths at between 3.4 to 4.7 million. This contradicts the Modi government's claim that the pandemic has claimed 414,000 lives so far. The study terms the devastation caused by the outbreak as India's worst human tragedy since the partition. The country is one of the few major economies without an estimate of excess deaths during the pandemic. Also, India is investigating its first documented human death from bird flu. The Health Ministry says an 11-year-old boy succumbed to the disease earlier this month. The ministry said the boy was admitted to New Delhi's hospital on the 2nd of July and died on 12th after a multi-organ failure. It said health workers who treated the patient and the boy's family have been kept in isolation. The authorities have not found any suspected case of bird flu in the boy's home state of Haryana. However, genome sequencing and contact tracing have been launched. The death from the bird flu virus highlights a potential new risk for the world's second most populous nation battling COVID pandemic. More news coming up in this news bulletin after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa has reiterated the armed forces' resolve to defeat the country's enemies. He was interacting with the family of a martyred officer, Captain Basit Ali, in his village near Haripur. The Army Chief said nothing is greater than sacrificing life for defense of the motherland. He said the entire nation is proud of the ultimate sacrifices rendered by the national heroes. Captain Basit, along with another soldier, embraced martyrdom earlier this month during an exchange of fire with militants in Kurram district. Now, at least 17 Bengali migrants have drowned in a shipwreck off Tunisia as they tried to cross the Mediterranean to Italy. Tunisian Red Crescent said the boat had set off from Zuwara on Libya's northwest coast. So the ship was carrying migrants from Syria, Egypt, Sudan, Eritrea, Mali and Bangladesh. It added that more than 380 were rescued by the Tunisian Coast Guard. Recently, several migrants have drowned in the Mediterranean as improved weather increased the attempted crossings to Europe. Now, the death toll from floods in central China has risen to 33 after torrential rains drenched Henan province. Authorities say more than 3 million people across the region have been affected. Tens of thousands of people are being evacuated as the severe weather spread northwards. According to officials, rainwater has damaged more than 215,000 hectares of cropland. They noted it has caused a direct economic loss of about $189 million so far. Authorities raised the storm alert for 4 cities to the highest tier of the weather warning system. Meanwhile, in neighboring Hebei province, 2 people were killed after a tornado struck the city of Baoding. Also, China says it rejects the US backing for Australia in its trade disputes with Beijing. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian was addressing a regular press briefing in Beijing. Zhao asked Washington to correct its mistakes instead of making baseless comments. He said Canberra's interference in China's internal affairs caused tensions in the bilateral relations. Earlier, US Trade Representative Catherine Tai said Washington is closely monitoring trade tensions between Australia and China. Talking to her Australian counterpart, Tai said the US will support Canberra in addressing China's state-led non-market practices. Now, the European Union has ruled out the renegation of the Brexit deal on the Northern Ireland Protocol as demanded by the UK. EU Commission's Vice President Maros Šefčovič said protocol cannot be redrawn. He said respecting international legal obligations is of paramount importance. Earlier, London demanded Brussels to agree on rewriting a deal overseeing problematic trade involving Northern Ireland. Britain said the country's protocol was flawed at conception. The protocol requires checks on goods between the British mainland and Northern Ireland, which remains part of the EU customs area. Saudi Aramco has confirmed that some of its data was leaked after hackers reportedly demanded ransom from the oil producer. Saudi Arabia's oil major said the company data was held by third-party contractors. It said the release of the data was not due to a system breach and has no impact on the operations. The oil producer said it continues to maintain a robust cyber-security posture. This comes amid reports that 1 terabyte of Aramco's data had been held by an extortionist. The state-owned driller was offered a chance to have the data deleted for $50 million in cryptocurrency. Now, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko says the US, along with its European allies, is behind the provocations against Minsk. In an interview, he accused the intelligence services of executing the agenda formulated by Western politicians. Referring to the attempted coup and his assassination, Lukashenko noted it was only possible under sanctions on the country's top leadership. The president also took aim at Germany for what he called management of terrorists acting in Belarus. He underscored that the West, led by Washington, will not allow Belarus to be a sovereign state. However, Minsk will defend its right to independently define its policies. Now, authorities in Madagascar say they have foiled a plot to kill President Andry Rajoelina. He was sworn in as the head of the Indian Ocean island country in 2019 after a hard-fought election. In a statement, Attorney General said police have arrested 6 people, including a foreign national. It said these individuals had devised a plan for the elimination of a number of other senior political figures as well. Now, a Hong Kong court has sentenced 7 people for their role in an attack on pro-democracy protesters during the 2019 unrest. This is the first conviction against any of over 100 white-shirted attackers who resorted to violence. Judge Eddie Yip described the crimes as mob justice, which caused panic among the general public. The court found 5 people guilty of rioting and wounding and with intent and handed them a 7-year jail. Meanwhile, 2 others received a sentence of 4 years and 8 months. A Russian court fined US social media giant Facebook and messaging app Telegram for failing to delete what it says is illegal content. The court slapped Facebook with a fine of over $81,000, while Telegram faces a penalty of nearly $150,000. Moscow has taken steps in recent months to regulate the power of social media. It has also told foreign firms to open offices in Russia and store the personal data of its citizens on its territory. A Russian court is expected later to rule on 2 similar accusations against Twitter as well. More news coming up after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, on the eve of the Tokyo Games, organizers have fired the director of the opening ceremony over a joke he made about the Holocaust. This comes after footage of Kentaro Kobayashi emerged from the 1990s, in which he made the joke as part of his comedy act. Japan's Olympic chief Seiko Hashimoto said the video ridiculed painful facts of history. Kobayashi apologized for his past comments in a statement. The dismissal is the latest in a string of scandals to hit the Games. Earlier, a composer quit after it emerged he had bullied classmates with disabilities at school. The head of the Tokyo 2020 organizing committee had also resigned over sexist remarks he made. Tokyo Olympics creative had followed after his derogatory comments about a popular Japanese female entertainer. Now, Russia has successfully launched its largest space module to the International Space Station. It is scheduled to dock with the Zvezda module at the ISS on the 29th of July. A Proton M carrier rocket carrying the module blasted off from Cosmodrome Baikonur in Kazakhstan. The module, dubbed Nauka, will provide the astronauts with additional storage space and technical equipment. It also supplies an ERA manipulator, which will allow astronauts to avoid some of the open space missions. Now, US stocks have opened flat after an unexpected jump in jobless claims that kept investors on edge about the economy. The S&P 500 traded near the flat line and Nasdaq Composite traded over 0.25%, while the Dow Jones Industrial Index was down at a fraction. Meanwhile, the oil prices surged on signs of tightening supplies. And with that, we come to the end of this news bulletin. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.